Hello, I'm Esther Gitu Yuot. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken meets with Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara in Abidjan. Washington views the country as an ally in the fight against Islamist insurgencies. The Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry says the death toll in Gaza has passed 25,000 people as UN officials warn of growing hunger and disease in Gaza. And a Kenyan journalist is running a publication that reports exclusively on issues affecting women. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was in Ivory Coast commercial capital Abidjan on Tuesday, meeting with President Alassane Ouattara. Washington views the country as an important ally in the fight against Islamist insurgencies and ensuring regional stability. Secretary Blinken's trip is the latest in a series of visits to Africa by U.S. government figures as Washington seeks to boost ties with a continent where China's influence is strong and many countries maintain cordial relations with Russia. Ivory Coast and Ghana are considered first lines of defense against the spread of groups like the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. Blinken first stopped in Cape Verde before arriving in Ivory Coast. Blinken spoke to the media while in Ivory Coast.
We appreciate particularly the leadership shown by Côte d'Ivoire in countering extremism and violence. We're announcing $45 billion in new funding through the U.S. strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability for coastal West African states. With this new investment, the United States will have invested nearly $300 million just over the past 2 years in stability-focused assistance in coastal West Africa. And we're also working to bolster Côte d'Ivoire's security capacity. There's been an increase in training multiplied 15 times, training equipment for the military just over the last year. We're expanding civilian forces investment as well.
Secretary Blinken is also heading to Nigeria and Angola. The Palestinian Health Ministry says the death toll in Gaza has passed 25,000 as the United Nations officials are warning of growing hunger and disease in Gaza. However, Israel says it is allowing food into Gaza, and the problem is the distribution on the Gaza side. Linda Gradstein reports from Jerusalem.
The United Nations says the humanitarian situation in Gaza is growing increasingly desperate, with food shortages and disease threatening the civilian population.
People are dying not only from bombs and bullets, but from lack of food and clean water, hospitals without power and medicine, and grueling journeys to even smaller slivers of land to escape the fighting.
The United Nations warns that the 2.3 million people of Gaza are on the brink of famine, with about 380,000 grappling with severe food insecurity. But according to COGAT, the Israeli army unit which deals with Palestinian civilian issues, Israel is doing everything it can to allow large amounts of humanitarian aid into Gaza, including opening a second crossing to speed up security inspections. COGAT says that the distribution problem is on the Gazan side, that Hamas militants steal some of the aid, and UN agencies are not efficient in distributing it.
We know that the humanitarian situation in Gaza is better than what Hamas are claiming. And I would also like to state that there are also bottlenecks and some problems within Gaza, within the humanitarian organizations that are operating.
Neither Hamas nor the UN responded to questions from VOA for this story. COGAT officials say that before the war, 400 to 500 trucks, including about 70 to 80 carrying food, entered Gaza from Israel each day. Now, an average of about 200 trucks go into Gaza daily, and about 150 of them are loaded entirely with food aid. In addition, large amounts of flour will be shipped through the Israeli port of Ashdod, about 20 miles north of Gaza, in an agreement recently announced by the Biden administration. This will supply the Gaza bakeries, which produce 2 million pita breads daily, in an arrangement with the World Food Program. In addition to the food shortage, Palestinian officials warn that diseases are spreading because of the overcrowding of almost 1.5 million Palestinians into UN schools and shelters in southern Gaza and the lack of proper sanitation.
In light of the large number of citizens, some diseases have started spreading. These include gastrointestinal diseases in adults and children, as well as respiratory system diseases, skin diseases such as scabies, and other diseases.
The humanitarian crisis is most acute among the 1 million Palestinians who fled to southern Gaza when the Israeli army began its military offensive in the north of the enclave. The army says it is still not safe for these people to return. Even when the fighting ends, a new report by the World Bank says that almost half of all residential buildings in Gaza have been destroyed or are too damaged to inhabit.
There is nothing left in the country. No schools, no universities, no health services, nothing. Think about the future of all these children. How will it be? How can they live after this?
While the war still rages, the growing humanitarian crisis has intensified international calls for a ceasefire. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin hosted a virtual meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group on Tuesday. This is the 18th meeting of the UDCG since the international group was formed in April 2022. The meeting includes ministers of defense from nearly 50 nations to discuss Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. For more on this meeting, VOA's Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb joins me from Arlington, Virginia. Hello, Carla.
Hi, Esther.
Now, what were the main issues Secretary Austin addressed on Ukraine?
Well, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin is mainly focused on keeping this group on track to provide Ukraine with what it needs to survive this very long winter, especially because right now Congress has not approved supplemental funding for the military, for the U.S. military to send to Ukraine. So the very last shipment approved by the Biden administration to go to Ukraine was on December 27th. So since then, no new money has been made available from the U.S. to Ukraine. So Austin is trying to convince allies that they need to step up as well. And Secretary Austin also wants to point out that while no new funding is available yet from the United States and the Biden administration still want very much to support Ukraine and are still fulfilling commitments that have already been agreed to in the past. One of those is going on right now, training of F-16 pilots in Arizona by the Arizona National Guard. So he's going to raise that issue, and as they work to figure out how to get F-16s inside Ukraine. Ukraine says it needs that desperately to help control the skies, and then also get some of the other weapon systems and the ammunition that they need that have already been approved in the past, make sure that that aid continues to flow.
Carla, what was the reaction to the Mid-East airstrike last night?
Well, as you know, there was a massive round of airstrikes in Yemen by not only the United States, but also the United Kingdom. They both used fighter jets, and the U.S. also used some of its ships to launch missiles into Yemen as well. 8 different locations were targeted. They included an underground bunker, the first time any sort of bunker with this type of conventional weaponry was hit. I'm being told that while the number of locations weren't quite as many as previous strikes earlier in the month on January 11th, there were about 16 locations that were hit. So more targets back then, but more weapons were destroyed now, is what I've been told, and more conventional weapons being destroyed now. The Pentagon has been pressed time and again, and I've pressed them, is this an escalation? Are we leading to war? And they say they are doing this to de-escalate, to prevent war. And they will point out to you that the last strike on international shipping lanes was several days ago. So they say that what they're doing is working.
Well, Carla, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your reporting. VOA's Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb reporting live for us from Arlington, Virginia. Liberia's new president, Joseph Boakai, had his first full day in office Tuesday, succeeding former football star George Weah. Boakai's inauguration was briefly interrupted Monday because of the 79-year-old leader's brief spell of exhaustion due to soaring temperatures. His party's Secretary General told AFP Boakai beat Weah in November's runoff poll with just over 50% of the vote.
It will ensure the rebuild of urban infrastructure and improve the delivery of health social services, such as combating the drug epidemic prevailing among youth and even create the future of our country.
Boakai will be steering Africa's oldest republic for 6 years. It's time for our Africa Cup of Nations update, and joining us now from Abidjan, Ivory Coast, is VOA's Mukbil Yabaru. Hello, Mukbil.
Hey, Esther, how you doing?
Good. Please recap some of yesterday's matches for us.
Yeah, if I were to just go over just a few of them, I would say that Equatorial Guinea versus Ivory Coast, the host nations, probably was the most devastating result for the home nation. Equatorial Guinea beat Ivory Coast 4-0 yesterday. I don't believe anybody had expected that result, especially from the fan base and the country alike. Ivory Coast played a relatively good game, but it was just that Equatorial Guinea was just a little bit more clinical in the last third and was able to score those goals. Ghana also ended up, they were winning 2-0 up until the 90th minute, and they ended up tying 2-2. Egypt and Cape Verde also tied 2-2 yesterday.
Well, you mentioned them all, Egypt, Nigeria, Equatorial Guinea. Any surprises there?
Yeah, so to me, the biggest shocker was the Ghana-Mozambique game. Ghana was leading for almost 90 minutes, and both goals were scored to tie them in extra time. So that was a huge shocker for a huge Ghanaian fan base here as well. Outside of that, I would say Cape Verde, Egypt. Egypt goes up 2-1 in extra time, and then maybe 97th minute, Cape Verde was able to tie the game. So huge, amazing games across the board.
Mukbil, very quickly, what are some of the other games lined up for today, and which ones might have bigger implications?
I would say mainly the games that I would say Senegal versus Guinea really would be the game to watch today, simply because they are kind of going to be the ones that will be at the top of that respective group. Kind of for bragging rights of that respective group, I would say Cameroon also has to win today. If Cameroon does not win today, they are in very, very difficult situation trying to come out of that group. So, yep.
Mukbil, many thanks. VOA's Mukbil Yabaru reporting live for us from Abidjan, Ivory Coast. Still to come, helping women tell their stories in a society that downplays their issues. We'll be right back.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak suffers a setback to his plans to deport some asylum seekers to Rwanda after Parliament's upper house backed a largely symbolic motion to delay ratification of a treaty aimed at overcoming a legal block. Under the proposed Rwanda plan, asylum seekers who arrive in England's southern coast would be sent to Rwanda. Colleagues of an abducted and slain Cameroonian journalist marked 1 year since the discovery of his mutilated body. Co-workers of Martinez Zogo created a shrine to the journalist who dared to speak out against corruption and cronyism before his brutal murder last January. His death is suspected to have been at the hands of an intelligence commando group. And the United Nations Migration Agency has launched its first global annual appeal, requesting nearly $8 billion for 2024 to manage the growing scale of population displacement. The International Organization for Migration says it is seeking the funds to, quote, save lives and protect people on the move, drive solutions to displacement, and facilitate safe pathways for regular migration. A Kenyan journalist is running a publication which exclusively reports on issues affecting women. Her publication, Women Kenya Network, is aimed at helping women tell their stories in a society that they say downplays their issues. Victoria Munga reports from Nairobi.
Welcome to Her Standards. My name is Queen Tambori.
Nairobi-based journalist Queen Tambori was chief sub-editor of a tabloid in a local media house. The 10-year veteran says she found the tabloid style of reporting on women disturbing because women were sexualized and misrepresented.
This bothered me for a very long time, and I even had, discussions here and there. Then I realized I could not fight 7 editors because more often than not, when we were caught up in an argument over, say, a misrepresentation of women, I would lose.
This is the only program that is all about women and for women.
In 2020, Mbori took action and founded Women Kenya Network, a website on which reporters file stories exclusively on women. At least 10 journalists are employed here, reporting on subjects ranging from business, innovation, climate change, and reproductive health.
We ensure that our stories are gender sensitive. We ensure that the stories are gender transformative. It's not just about, looking at balance and looking at, novelty and looking at human interest and looking at, the usual, the 5 W's. No, we go beyond that. We want to look at solutions. We want to look at human aspect. We want to look at impact.
A 2022 report by Oxford University found that women are largely underrepresented in news coverage and portrayed in stereotypical and simplistic ways. So Kenya's Association of Media Women is championing more female representation in reporting through partnerships.
We also used to partner with UN Women to see how, as an organization, we can have sensitization workshops for women in leadership on how they can take advantage of media, be it social media or mainstream media, to profile themselves in politics. In addition, we've held several trainings for journalists, both male and female, for including senior editors, engaging them on the need to be gender sensitive.
Indigenous women have an even harder time getting their stories told, according to a grassroots women-led community organization, Roots Kenya.
Engage this woman where she belongs. They have the content. If it means this person speaks in Luya, engage them in the Luya language in Western Kenya. If this person speaks in Luo, engage them in the Luo dialect where this person belongs. And I'm sure all of them, most of them, will have some content of what they have gone through.
Kenya has made significant strides in promoting gender equality according to a recent World Bank report, but there is still work to be done. Journalists like Mbori believe that publications like Women Kenya Network will bring more success stories about women to the public eye. Victoria Amunga, VOA News, Nairobi.
Voters in New Hampshire are deciding on Tuesday whether to give former U.S. President Donald Trump an indisputable win toward the Republican presidential nomination or bolster his closest rival Nikki Haley's bid to topple him in a pivotal primary election. Trump and the former South Carolina governor made their appeals to voters in what became a two-person race after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race and endorsed Trump. For more on the primaries, I'm joined live from New Hampshire by VOA's Caroline Presutti. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, Esther. Good to be with you.
Who is leading in New Hampshire, Trump or Nikki Haley?
Well, it depends on which poll you look at, but mainly all of the polls say that Trump is leading by about 50% of registered Republicans, likely Republicans, and then Haley comes in at 35%. But what Haley is hoping for today is to get the vote of the independents. Because in this state of New Hampshire, if you come in as an undeclared voter in these doors to vote, you can use either a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot. And she's hoping a lot of those independents will choose a Republican ballot and, of course, vote for her. In fact, the former UN ambassador showed up here at this precinct in Bedford, New Hampshire, about half an hour ago. And I asked her about how it's going today. And she said, this is what Election Day is all about: democracy and freedom, and people going and showing the power of their vote. Certainly that's what she's counting on. At the same time, former President Donald Trump is counting on that too. He's hoping that he will widen the gap between he and Haley, so much so that some analysts say the Republican nomination could be over after today. Haley says, I'm sticking it out. Trump is hoping that he widens it with these votes here in New Hampshire. New Hampshire has always been the state of kind of quirky voters, and they kind of turn elections upside down. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I can tell you, it has been a steady stream here. I don't know if you can see that line behind me, but it has been that way for the last 4.5 hours. People vote right here at these booths, and there's a lot of traffic around this high school. So certainly they have the excitement, and they're coming out in full force.
And what issues are New Hampshire voters most concerned about?
They're talking economy. Everybody's talking economy. We talked to people in line at the rallies. The Trump rally crowd was wrapped around the block. They were in line for hours in really frigid temperatures. And they say, we want the economy back. We want a Trump White House like we had 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Others will tell you we want something different. In the Haley line for the rallies, they say we're done with the drama. We want somebody new. We want somebody who understands foreign policy. So it just depends who you're talking to on which side they are. Of course, on the Democratic side, you have President Joe Biden as a write-in in this state, because the the National Democratic Party decided to change the date of the first in the nation primary for the Democrats to South Carolina, which is next week. So because of that, New Hampshire, being very proud of their designation as the first in the nation primary, decided to hold the primary instead. But he is a write-in candidate. So at the bottom of the ballot, there's an empty spot, and that's where voters must write in the name of Joe Biden instead of just checking the box for the other candidate. There's a write-in campaign going on, signs all over, people waving at cars with a sign that says write in Joe Biden on the ballot. So we'll see how successful that effort is tonight when we get the results here in New Hampshire.
Caroline, we got a long way for these, primaries, and then we'll get to the real deal. So thank you so much for your reporting. Caroline Prasudi, live for us from New Hampshire. It's time for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Esther. Cameroon has launched the world's first routine vaccine program against malaria. The RTSS vaccine, also known as Mosquirix, is being administered through a routine program to children after successful trials of the drug in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. 19 other African countries aim to roll out the vaccines this year, targeting over 6 million children in these countries in 2024 and 25, according to Global Vaccine Alliance, Gavi. A new global campaign was launched recently at the World Economic Forum in Davos, calling for urgent action to improve access to assistive technology for millions of people worldwide. For more on this new global campaign designed to raise awareness of assistive technology, I'm joined from Geneva by Pascal Bilgeveld, CEO of Ascal. Mr. Bilgeveld, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
First off, why was it important to launch the campaign Unlock the Everyday, which is the name of the campaign, and what are the main objectives?
So, assistive technology, for those who may be wondering what it is what I'm wearing, my eyeglasses. It's also hearing aids, wheelchairs, prosthetics, even your digital phone if you use captioning or voice messaging, for example, or magnifying functions. All of that is assistive technology. It basically changes your life every day for the rest of your life. And that's why we launched the campaign, Unlock the Everyday, because this has been an issue neglected for far too long.
That disparities are a reality in access to assistive technologies. Talk to us about the regions that are most affected and what is being done during this campaign to ensure that more people have those access.
So the numbers are quite shocking. 2.5 billion people in the world need one form of assistive technology or another. That's a third of the world's population. In high-income countries, about 80% on average, sometimes 90%, have access to the AT, the assistive technology that they need. In low-income countries, that number is 10%. I'm talking about many countries in Africa, in South Asia, in Latin America, and this situation is totally unacceptable. And so through this campaign, we're aiming to raise awareness, to get governments to do more, to live up to their responsibilities. They've signed the Convention for the Rights of People Living with Disabilities, for example, but they're not implementing those commitments. It's everyone's responsibility, not just governments. It's the private sector, those who are manufacturing assistive technology, and other players. It's civil society as well. Organizations of people with disabilities need to demand these products and services. It is a human right.
So what will success look like in 2 to 5 years, and what indicators will be taken into consideration?
So we're launching a slew of different programs in partnership with governments and civil society and the private sector to really scale up access to assistive technology through, for example, mass screening in schools for vision and hearing, and providing hearing aids and eyeglasses to children who otherwise might be failing school. These and many other efforts are going to catalyze a movement that will help reach 500 million people by 2030. That's what success looks like. 500 million people reached by 2030 in a sustainable way, where national policies are more inclusive and supportive of people with disabilities, but not only, because remember, this is about everyone. Everyone needs assistive technology at some point in their life. If we all grow old enough, for example, we'll need perhaps eyeglasses or a wheelchair or hearing aids. So really, it is everybody's business.
That's indeed a reality. Pascal, thank you so much for joining us today. Pascal Bijleveld is the CEO of AtScaled, the global partnership for assistive technology. That's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on X @LenorMoudou. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Leno. Be sure to watch Leno Moudou's health reports every Tuesday on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.